Hello, good afternoon. All of you, can you hear me? Anyone of
Yes,
any?
ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Yes, good afternoon. Meeting after a long time, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Hope all of you are fine and all are fine, doing well. Yes, right.
Ma'am.
Take care yourselves and family members, and make use of the time, right? That you have got at home. So, I'll start with today's demonstration. Today we are going to understand how the serum calcium levels are being estimated. So, you were yesterday's or day before maybe madam has dealt with serum calcium, its significance, how this mineral calcium is important in the body, what are its functions, what are the organs that are important in the homeostasis of this calcium in the body. So if you recall that, you will come to know about the significance of calcium in the body. Right, already it has been dealt in detail in the theory class of mineral by Indira ma'am, right? So after this, now once you have some cases where you will come to know about this tetany like symptoms, the how you will come to know by measuring the serum calcium level, we can come to know about the disorder, whether the levels are normal or not. So that is what we are going to understand today. What are the different methods for estimation of serum calcium, and in our laboratory how we are going to measure it. So today's aim for today's practical is about estimation of serum calcium levels. So this is about the calcium introductory part. This is significance of calcium, how it is being distributed in the ICF and ECF, and the major roles of this calcium we have to remember is it helps in the regulation of neuromuscular activities, muscles, and the some of the enzymes it has got role. Again, it is also acting as a second messenger. So that is the major role of calcium in the body. Next is exists this calcium as a whole. It occurs in free as well as ionized forms in the body. And the methods that we are going to understand here today, they are going to please mute your someone someone's speaker is on. Please mute your speaker. Please mute your speakers. All of you check. Anybody's speaker is on. Right. So it exists in both free as well as ionized form. So this is well regulated mechanism for maintenance of calcium homeostasis in the body. And always you know calcium is in inverse relationship with the other important element that you are going to learn, or maybe I don't know whether it is being completed or not, that is the phosphorus. So calcium and phosphorus, both of these are important for formation of the bone, and they are always existing in the inverse relationship with the each other. That means if calcium levels are increased, phosphorus levels are going to be decreased in the serum, and so vice versa. Like that, they are always working together, and hence the levels of serum and calcium estimations are helpful in the diagnosis of various skeletal, neuromuscular, and endocrine disorders, along with certain imbalances of acid base, blood clotting deficiencies, irregular heart rhythms, and also the renal disorders. So that is why we need to understand how to estimate the serum calcium levels in the blood. So our aim for today's practical, a simple experiment that we are going to understand today is the estimation of serum calcium, and the method by which we use it, we estimate it is called as Arsenazo 3 complex method. That is a dye which binds with calcium, and that is how we can come to know colorimetrically the complex that is formed, that we can read colorimetrically, and we can find out the amount of calcium in the serum sample. So the principle or the mechanism on which this method is based is, this is the principle, that is serum calcium binds with arsenazole 3 a dye that is at neutral pH to form violet colored arsenazole 3 calcium complex. So at the end point you will get violet colored complex. The intensity of this color is directly proportional to the concentration of calcium present in the given sample, and this intensity is measured on colorimeter using 650 nanometer wavelength. I hope you have been, is this your first quantitative experiment? Anybody, any one of you can unmute and tell me. Is this your first quantitative experiment? Any one of you who is there? Mahantesh?
Yes, ma'am.
Is this your first experiment quantitatively to be done? Are you understanding it first time? You are able to hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
So for the first time, if you are understanding, I want to tell you that the intensity or the color which is developed, that you have to read on the colorimeter. That instrumentation you have learned, I think in the demonstration in previous class, this instrument has been dealt in detail, colorimeter. So where you have to make the series of test tubes, that is we are going to understand in the procedure. So this will be the quantitative experiment. All the quantitative type of experiments we are going to learn under these different headings. That is the aim, which method you are going to use it, what is the principle behind that method, and any method whenever you are learning, that is indicates the name of the methods are given either by the reagent that is being used or the name of the scientist that who has invented this method, or the specific reaction what is taking place inside the in that particular method. So like that you have for glucose pod method, for your total protein biurate method, the reagent that you are going to use. Like that for calcium we have arsenazole 3 method, that is because we are going to use the reagent arsenazole 3. So here this it is going to form a colored complex. All these quantitative methods are based on the colorimetric measurements, and the basis for colorimetric analysis is formation of a colored complex or colored complex at the end of the reaction. So whenever you are mixing these serum samples with the reagents, at the end point you will get a particular color, and that color can be read, the absorbance of that color can be read on the colorimeter, and thus we can quantitate the amount of the substance that is present in the given serum sample. So this simple arsenazole 3 dye is having the capacity or the tendency to bind with the calcium present in the serum sample, and that is going to give you this violet color complex, which will be read on the colorimeter. So next part of the quantitative experiments is the procedural details. Here we have to take always any quantitative experiment. You have three test tubes, set of three test tubes. They are labeled as T, S and B. So this T stands for the test, S for standard and B for blank. So what is test, what is standard and blank? So the test is the test tube in which you will be taking the unknown sample or your serum sample. So in the this procedural table you can see here, this table shows the sequence of the additions of the reagent and the sample in respective test tubes. So in this table you can see first in all the three clean test tubes, your glass test tubes are there, you have to first label and remember for calcium estimation the glassware should be thoroughly clean and dry. Any impurity is going to cause the increase or decrease in your absorbance. It is going to definitely going to increase your intensity of the color that is formed, and hence you have to take proper precaution while making use of the test tubes for estimation of serum calcium particularly. For all the estimations you have to have the clean test tube. It does not mean that other estimations do not require clean glasswares. It is not like that. Particularly for calcium, you have to have the clean, dry glasswares. So these test tubes you have to label and then go on adding the reagents in the sequence that is shown in the table here. So this left side you have the reagents to be added. So first in all the three test tubes you add 1000 microliter, that is 1 ml of the calcium reagent. Next is take distilled water in the test tube labeled as blank. Then comes the standard calcium solution. Here that is the concentration of the standard is always known, which is prepared in the laboratories, or if you are using the auto analyzers, wherever you are using the kits, the standard solution is provided with that kit method also. So this is already being prepared. The solution whose concentration is known. Now here we are estimating the calcium. So we use the calcium standard, that is the standard solution whose concentration is known here, and that you have to take in the tube labeled as standard. And the third is the serum sample, that is your test sample. May it be from the that is the patient's serum sample in which you are trying to calculate the amount of serum. Are you getting? So the purpose of making these three test tubes in the quantitative type of experiments, that is blank, standard and test, it is the necessity for all the colorimetric or spectrophotometric analysis where the blank is devoid of any sample. Rest everything is there. Reagent is there, but in place of sample you are adding the water here. Next, standard is of the solution of known concentration. Remember the three tubes, that is test, standard and blank, what it is and why we have to prepare them. So blank will be always devoid of any sample. Standard is standard calcium, that means we have known concentration of the calcium in that particular solution, that you have to take equal quantities that of the serum sample, and this serum is of the patient sample that is containing, or that you have to take in the volume in the all the three will be uniform. You see here 100,000 microliter of the reagent, 20 microliter of the sample, in all the three ultimate volume is 1020 microliter. Is it not? So when all the experimental conditions are maintained together, then there can be comparison between the absorbance obtained in the three test tubes. Ultimately, we have to make use of these values or absorbance, what we are going to read on colorimeter for the calculation to measure the calcium concentration in the given serum sample. And remember the blank is devoid of sample, but it is to be prepared to rule out the absorbance of the test tube or the color. If it is there in the given sample, it is because of the color of reagent. Whatever absorbance you are going to get, that will be mainly because of the reagent color, and that additional absorbance you have to subtract from the standard and test tubes. So that we will understand in the later part. So remember, blank is containing distilled water in place of the sample, or it is devoid of any sample. It is prepared to rule out the absorbance of the absorbance in the test due to any colored reagent. If it is colored, that much absorbance will be subtracted from the absorbance of test and standard. Now, for example, your biuret reagent or Benedict C reagent that you have used, do you remember the color of those reagents? Benedict's reagent, I know everybody has used. So it is blue in color. Initially only it has got some blue color. So when you put in the reaction, then whatever additional absorbance you are going to get, that may be because of that blue color of the reagent. So first we have to check whether the reagent is having any absorbance or not, and that is done by preparing the blank in the series of the test tube. Next is standard solution. Now here the comparison is going to be done between the test and standard. So if you know the known concentration of calcium in 20 microliter of the sample gives this much of the absorbance, then 20 microliter of unknown will give how much. That way we are going to make use of this standard. So standard is the solution of known concentration. Blank is devoid of sample, standard is of known concentration, and the test is unknown concentration sample or the patient sample. This is the basis that you have to remember for all the quantitative type of the experiments. Is that clear? I hope these things you will be now remembering for all your experiments. So preparation of standard, blank and test is to be understood and remembered further. Now, once you add all the reagents with the help of micropipettes, everything, all these reagents you have to add with the help of micropipettes, mix them well. Immediately you have to read the absorbance on colorimeter using 650 nanometer wavelength. And once you read, you have to note down the observations under the headings OD of B, that is optical density of B, optical density of standard and optical density of test. Note down all of your absorbances. Now further, these values you have to put in the formula for calculation. So the calculation is done using these formula that has been already taught in your demonstration for colorimeter. So any colorimetric or spectrophotometric analysis will have the formula, that is OD of test minus OD of blank. Remember, this additional intensity we are going to subtract from that of test and standard. So this step is OD of test minus OD of blank upon OD of standard minus OD of blank. That means now both will be equal, or you can say uniform. We are doing subtraction of blank reading from both test as well as standard. So all the uniform experimental conditions will be maintained here. And then that also is followed in the formula for calculation. Next is into concentration of standard upon effective volume of the sample that is being used. Now these two things you have to learn to calculate depending on the procedure that you are following. Now let us understand how much will be the concentration of standard that is taken in this particular procedure. Now always remember, the standard concentration will be given to you in this procedural table only. You can find the standard calcium concentration, that is here given is 100 milligram per deciliter. That means 100 milligram of calcium is dissolved in 100 ml of distilled water. Got it? Now, are you taking how much of the amount you are taking from this? You are simply taking 20 microliters. Clear? Now, I have to calculate if 100 ml is containing 100 milligram of calcium, how much will be there in the 20 microliters of the calcium? Can anybody tell me? You just simplify the things. Before doing any calculation, both the things you have to convert into micro quantities. So 100 milligram will be converted by multiplying 1000 and that will be micrograms. Both the units should be uniform. So make it into micrograms. This also you make it into microliters. So 100 multiplied by 1000 will give you the microliter quantities. This is how you have to all the time see how much volume you are taking and what is the standard concentration given, and from that you can calculate the effective or the concentration of standard that is being used here. So when you do it for this particular calcium standard, it comes to around 20 microgram. So 20 microliter will be containing 20 micrograms of the calcium. You simplify this for your understanding. You want to try? Anybody will do the calculation? I have told you how to convert milligrams into micrograms, deciliter into microliters, and then you can get the volume as 20 micrograms here. And the effective volume of the sample that is being used. Now this effective volume of the sample will be measured depending on what method you are following. Now here we are not going to do any treatment to the serum sample. As such, we have taken 20 microliter of the serum. But for certain estimations, for example, serum inorganic phosphorus estimation, we have to prepare the protein-free filtrate, where you have to mix 1 ml of serum with 9 ml of trichloroacetic acid. That means that 1 ml of serum is getting diluted to 10 times. That is total volume becoming 10. So 9 plus 1 becomes 10. So 1 ml is diluted to 10 and hence the effective volume of the sample will be also diluted. It is not exactly 1 ml and hence thus this is important. Depending on the procedure, you have to calculate effective volume of the sample used here. But now in this procedure of arsenazole 3, we are taking directly 20 microliter sample and hence it remains 20. Did you get these 2 points? Concentration of standard and effective volume of the sample. These are variable depending on the method for estimation of that particular compound. So every time you must understand how to calculate these 2 entities in the formula for calculation. Clear? So remember this. Now for calcium estimation, it becomes 20 microgram in 20 microliter. And when you simplify this, it becomes, okay. It should be, it is not 100. Just a second, 1 minute. Some mistake is there. Ultimately, your formula for calculation becomes 20. Sorry, this it should be 2 upon 20. It is not 20. Just corrections I will make. So it is 2 by 20. The mistake is because standard concentration is 10 milligram. It should be 10 milligram per deciliter. Okay, so that you have this formula now becomes, when you simplify these things, it becomes T. Now this you can see. So after subtraction, we have to put it in this form that is small t upon small s, that is after subtraction of the blank reading, multiply by these two factors, and this after simplification becomes t by s into 10. Now depending on your absorbances, whatever you get, that you put here, multiply by 10, and you can get the amount of serum calcium in milligram per deciliter. This is how you have to do the calculations from the obtained optical densities in the test, in the given procedure, right? So now coming to the next aspect, that is the normal serum levels of the calcium. So as I have told, it exists in both the calcium ionized and unionized forms. So total calcium is about 8.5 to 11 milligram per deciliter, which also can be put in the millimolar concentration as 2.1 to 2.6 millimole per liter, and the ionized fraction of the calcium is 4.5 to 5.6 milligram per deciliter, or 1.1 to 1.4 millimole per liter. So this is the next aspect. Then if depending on your values, you have to check whether it is in the normal range or is there any variation. If it is increased or decreased, that we have to understand, and that is how, this is how to be understood under the clinical significance of this particular estimation. So you will see the increased calcium levels will be obtained in these different conditions, which is already dealt in detail in theory. So these are the points or the conditions in which you will find the increased serum calcium level. And mainly the hypercalcemia occurs when the influx of calcium into the extracellular fluid is greater than the efflux of calcium out of this compartment. So once if it is retained in this compartment, then only it is going to be seen increased, and these are the conditions: hyperparathyroidism, secretion of PTH like hormone, that is in malignant tumors, osteolytic diseases like multiple myeloma, metastatic carcinoma of bone, as a diuretics which causes enhanced retention of calcium, vitamin D intoxication leading to increased intestinal absorption of calcium, multiple fractures, prolonged immobilization. All these things are going to give you increased serum calcium levels, and that is called as hypercalcemia. Whereas if the levels are decreased below the normal, the causes are the conditions. In these conditions, levels will be below normal. Contrary to the hyperparathyroidism, it is hypoparathyroidism, the primary disease of parathyroids, accidental removal of parathyroid, thyroidectomy or parathyroidectomy, or medullary carcinoma of thyroid. In these conditions, if it is to be removed, then there will be decreased calcium level, chronic renal failure, tetany, malabsorption, in rickets and osteomalacia due to vitamin D deficiency. The normal serum calcium is maintained by secondary hyperparathyroidism. This is a consequence of lower serum inorganic phosphorus. Following an episode of acute pancreatitis or peritonitis, when the calcium complexes with fatty acids and which are released by the inflamed pancreas. Hypoalbuminemia can lead to hypocalcemia, but it does not necessarily require the treatment, since the free fraction of the calcium will be normal. So this is the clinical aspects related to the estimation of serum calcium level. All the interorgan relationship of calcium, that is intestine, bone, thyroid hormone, renal system, this all has been has been taught to you in the theory, that you have to recall and understand how the intestinal absorption will have effect on the calcium and phosphorus levels. So this is how about the clinical aspects. Now coming to the errors that can be associated with the estimation of serum calcium level, and they are called as pre-analytical errors. That is, pre-analytical is during collection of the sample or before it reaches to the laboratory, what are the possible ways where you may get the improper handling of the sample will lead to the errors in the values that you are going to get. So it can be due to increase in total calcium associated with tourniquet use and occlusion during sampling. The tourniquet should be used briefly and should remain on the arm till sampling is complete. Fist clenching should be avoided, which can produce local acidosis and spurious values. Changes in posture can lead to fluid shifts that alter the concentration of protein and total calcium in the vascular compartment. Hyperventilation and exercise lower and raise levels of free calcium respectively. Because of changes in blood pH, it is because of the changes in the blood pH, calcium levels are also going to be increased. Hemolysis should be avoided by using a sufficiently wide bore needle, and its alter-free calcium values. As the needle that you are going to use for collection of the sample is also going to affect the calcium values. So prolonged contact with RBCs should be avoided as they can take up the calcium. So these are the points which you have to take into account before you collect the sample for calcium estimation. So these are called as the pre-analytical errors. Now this is the one method that we have understood here. Other various methods are good. So they are enlisted here. So one is these different methods are precipitation by oxalates and redox titration, precipitation by colored anions by spectrophotometry, but nowadays these are being obsolete. These methods are nowadays not being followed in laboratories because of certain it was only the initial reference method. Now it is not in use. This is labor intensive and not is used. The most specific and sensitive method is atomic absorption spectrophotometry. This is very accurate and sensitive reference method. Next is isotope dilution mass spectrophotometry. This is also a definite method. But what happens, these instrumentations are available, are affordable by only certain institutions because they are huge cost and maintenance instruments. So all the laboratory setup cannot have these instruments, and hence we have certain chemical methods or manual methods that can be used in the biochemistry laboratory setup, and hence the other methods have been derived using different chemicals like arsenazole. Next is O-chrysophthalate is another reagent. So that is also being used for estimation of serum calcium. Apart from that, the isotope dilution, this direct ion sensitive electrode are also being developed that are for the ionized calcium fraction only. So that is especially for ionized calcium. Then, as I have told, these are the laboratory methods which are based on this dye binding method, that is arsenazole 3 or O-chrysophthalate method. Now, if even on the autoanalyzer, the methods which are based, they can be either using this ion selective electrode for ionized fraction, or it can be using this arsenazole 3 complex dye binding method. So these are the things that will be followed in the routine clinical biochemistry laboratory for estimation of serum calcium. These instruments are more accurate and more, they give exact values, but all the laboratories cannot afford these instruments, and hence we have to rely on certain dye bind methods that like arsenazole and OCPC, that is O-chrysophthalate method. So these are routinely used in biochemistry laboratories, that you have to remember. So this is all about today's experiment, that is estimation of serum calcium by Arsenault method. So these are the points all of you have, I think, will have to follow the points under which you are supposed to write the experiments in your record book. So right from the title, date, as usual you write introduction, briefly you have to introduce what is that particular compound that you are going to estimate. So next is what is the aim of that experiment, name of the method, principle, reagents, procedure, observation, and sometimes you have, if there is specific sample collection method, that you have to add immediately after the methodology only, you have to write the sample collection. So depending on the procedures, we will be dealing or telling you about those points also that you have to write. Next, observation, calculation, normal levels, then you have to write about the clinical significance. Then once you write the normal levels, here you have to write your report. After calculation, what is your report, that you have to write here. And then you write the clinical significance. Both the conditions you have to mention, hyper and hypo. Next, apart from that, in addition, other methods we have to mention. And for any particular method, if pre-analytical errors are being given, you have to write that. So these are the points and headings under which you are supposed to write all the quantitative type of experiments in your record book, right? Here I have given some of the questions which are most likely to be asked about today's experiment. That is, what are the functions of calcium, what are the factors that affect the calcium absorption, causes for hypo and hypercalcemia, how the calcium homeostasis is maintained in the body. Apart from that, dietary calcium sources, dietary calcium phosphorus ratio, RDA for calcium, all these things can be asked during your practical and oral viva, both theory as well as practical, right? So you can take down these questions and write the answers to these questions in the record book also. You can write that. Followed? So this is the question that are to be related to this experiment. Now here you can have the case-based question on this calcium estimation also. So here I have given you one case scenario that you can read, and these cases will be given like this, and below that the questions are asked from the patient's history. You have to read and find out the answers to these questions. This is practical. Just I have given you one sample question here related to serum calcium level. So all of you can write down this question, and you can send to my mail, or you can keep it ready. Whenever we ask, you should be able to submit it to the department. So are you getting? So what can be the, you read and try to ask the question, answer the questions. I will give you 2 to 3 minutes. One by one we can go on answering these questions. So like this, the case-based questions will be given to you. And from this only we will build up case reports or case studies. Answer, why that noise? Send it to me. Let's see. You have contact. So you can send it to me. You write down. We will discuss. If there is any problem, I will help you in guiding those. Right? So I hope all of you will write this answers to these questions. make a practice of writing, because again we are going to continuously keeping on going, giving you the case-based scenarios and all those things that will help you in how to write the case-based questions. So they are always, they can be asked in both the forms, long essay as well as short answer. A long case scenario can be given for 10 marks, or only for 5 marks also we can ask you a short question, a short case. So like this you have to make a practice of the case-based scenario so that you will not miss it in the examination. So I will try to give on my vitamin topic also, whatever theory topics we are covering. For each topic we will give you the case-based questions. That will be a practice for you people. Right? So I hope everybody has followed today's experiment, what we have done, and you write down the answers and can be sent to me. So these are the references for today's experiment. Now with the last slide, I want to close my today's demonstration. So do not waste your time. Keep on reading, prepare. How was your MCQs test today? How many of you could answer? Could you answer biochemistry MCQs, whether they were difficult, easy? Anyone can answer? No responses.
Easy, ma'am.
They were very easy. You were happy. All of you are happy then? I think all of you, then 100 out of 100 can I expect? Hope all of you will score good marks there, right? So do not waste your time. Prepare, read on your own. We are there for your guidance. Any doubt, difficulties you can send to us. All the medias are with you. Contact numbers are there, email IDs are there. You can get and communicate. Whatever you are writing, you get it cross-checked by the teachers. Do not just keep it with you, and don't try to copy from the Google, Wikipedia and all. Do not use that. If you want to refer really the good resources for biochemistry, I will suggest you the PPT presentations by Dr. Namrata Chabra is there. Another TVS Rao is there. Then my medical biochemistry PPTs are there. You can refer to such websites. Press these PPTs by Rohini Sane. We are also, because referring sometimes we will be also taking some of the figures, diagrams from those PPTs. So you can use authenticate sites for preparing or reading your material. So diagrammatic presentations, illustrations are nicely given in these PPTs by these authors. So you can refer to those. So, and make your own points, and that will be easy for you to understand. Okay. Finally, all of you, do not move outside. Stay home, stay safe, and take care of yourself. Thank you for today's demonstration. So I'll leave, right? Okay, bye.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.